2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know what day it is, into 2024, and we already have so much news out of the crypto world. Joining me, as always, we have Robbie Ferguson, president and co-founder of Immutable, to dive into what the first half of the first month of 2024 has looked like. Robbie, wow, kicking off the year in all sorts of crazy ways.
It's been a crazy 3 weeks. It felt like last year was just continuously accelerating, and I think we'll see that continue into 24. So I'm excited. I fit what I could in of a break, but it's good to be back.
Yeah, there are no breaks in crypto. So the first piece of news that we, of course, have to talk about is the Bitcoin ETF and what you think this means for the ecosystem writ large. But before we get to that, if folks have been enjoying this content, please do subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment, like it. We've got a lot of great content coming out for you in 2024, so you don't want to miss a thing. All right, Robbie, I got to ask you, Bitcoin ETF, big deal. We knew it was coming, but didn't stop it from being exciting when it happened. What do you make of this news? What do you think people should really take away from this?
First off, I think a lot of this has been priced in by the market, but the thing I found quite interesting, and obviously it's still early days, it wasn't a sell the news event. And for something that had been this built up into the market, it's driven a good chunk of price action, 30% for Ethereum and Bitcoin over the last 3-4 months as it's become clear that this was going to happen with 75% confidence. To have the peak and premium on the day as well is unusual, especially in crypto. And second, I think this opens the floodgates for far more institutional adoption and almost legitimacy of crypto this year, which is going to open up huge buckets of funding. We're going to see ETFs flow on to, I think, more of the top 10 and top 20 tokens. We're going to see things like gaming ETFs over the next 12 to 18 months open up as well. I'm fairly confident. I mean, we already have tokens in ETNs or structured products that has been literally being built over the last 3 months. We have the Van Eck gaming report on Immutable, which is really exciting. So I think we've got a lot of interesting residual impacts that this will have on, I guess, the rest of companies in the space. And I think my overall thoughts is, first, it's objectively been a success, right? It's drawn the most inflows out of any ETF in history on its first day. Now, a lot of this is the graduation of the non-spot ETFs, but overall, it has been a massive signal of success. You've seen interesting impacts actually even on Coinbase, where they're fighting this narrative of cannibalizing Coinbase's market share, that they're going to be able to maintain the mainstream form of access. But even these are signals that this is a meaningful product, that it's impacting other companies like that. I was a big fan of Balaji Sekhu, who always, I'm a huge fan of Balaji, he always dramatizes things intentionally, but he was like, this is the reversal spiritually of FDR's seizure of gold through his executive order, where he's putting custodial ownership of finance back in people's hands, which we took out of people's hands when we took away the gold standard and took away gold itself with the executive order. Which, I think this is a pretty serious deal. We've been fighting for this level of regulatory approval for a very long time now. I think Hester Peirce's dissent was exceptional. If people haven't read it, go do. And it wasn't actually dissenting an opinion. In this case, it was a consensus opinion, but it was really saying, this doesn't undo the harms that has been done by this ETF not being approved for so long. The denial of it was still arbitrary and capricious, and this marks the end of what has been a very sort of fruitless and really almost futile struggle against what is an inevitable outcome, which is good for consumers and for customers. And of course, the most hilarious thing is that it was announced a day early because they didn't have to obey it. So yeah, there's lots of theories out as who's behind that hack and why they did that, but I kind of favor they're a pro crypto hacker who wanted to do something reasonably innocent and just kind of, embarrass the parties involved. Elon Musk got a chance to get his stab in through Twitter safety. So yeah, very amusing set of events.
There were just so many funny old tweets from the SEC resurfacing, like the SEC tweeting the only place to get real information about the SEC is the SEC Twitter. Or, like don't rely on other Twitter accounts. Like trust our Twitter account, and obviously them advising people to have 2FA, and they definitely had egg on their face. You mentioned this Van Eck report, and I want to talk about this as well. Van Eck put out a report, a series of predictions as well for 2024. I thought the predictions were interesting, and they mentioned that this will be a year that will have a breakout game, and specifically really talked about Immutable as being where they expect a breakout game to come from, and talking about Passport and really just touting, I think, a lot of your success and things we've been talking about in general. Curious how y'all reacted to this. I'm sure it was fun to see you getting the credit you deserve.
Yeah, obviously I've spent a lot of time with institutions and VCs over the last few months, and I think the really exciting position for Immutable is we're by far the category leader in Web3 gaming, and as the position of gaming rises this year, and it's well poised to be the breakout category in crypto, well poised to be the most funded category in crypto. It's what everyone wants to win. Immutable, by being in this pole position, automatically receives, I think, a lot of this mainstream interest, because it's almost like the index access for gaming. We have the most games built on us. We have sort of this one-stop shop infrastructure. We've got a lot of partnerships which bring a lot of key ecosystem people into what our offering to end customers is. I think Van Eck was a massive legitimacy point, which I was really excited to see. We hadn't even been talking to the guys that came out, so that was a really, sometimes you get bad surprises, sometimes you get nice surprises. That was one of the latter, and I think we'll see a lot more of this sort of research come out of the next year as people build a gaming thesis, and then it inevitably covers the platform and the work that we're building over at Immutable. So I'm very excited for that, and I think Guild of Guardians, Illuvium, Shardbound, these games coming out in the next few months are well poised to be very meaningful hits.
Yes, and Illuvium and I think Guild of Guardians getting specific mention and shout outs in the Van Eck piece. Lots of reasons to be excited about Immutable and the work y'all are doing this year.
And so Guild of Guardians just went live in Canada. I'm super excited. The one thing I'll say is I think there's a nice spiritual alignment between ETF managers and between crypto. Like, they both were founded on this premise, John Bogle originally, who invented Vanguard, on, hey, I can create another managed fund and make huge amounts of money for myself and profit, or I can democratize access to the best performing asset class in history, which is equities, and I can give everyone access for a very, very low cost. And it was very much, he intentionally wanted to do this to benefit people in the US. And in fact, they've done historical analysis, and ETFs have been the single, financial product invention that has shifted wealth equality to be more balanced at any single individual product. And I think there's a lot of spiritual alignment between the founders of these firms, like Van Eck, and crypto, because they are about how do we give fair democratic access to financial opportunity, and how do we empower end customers rather than having this be kept in ivory towers with super high fees. And I think that's part of the reason that these people are getting so engaged.
Yeah, it's a great point. Also, more good news in the first half of the first month of 2024 here. We have the Epic Game Store, Web3 gaming, back in the Epic Game Store. Great news. Talk to me about this process.
So Epic Game Store obviously had this issue where the ratings agency would automatically classify any game with Web3, I think it was ESRB, that basically said, if you have Web3 assets you can earn in-game, it's an adult-rated game. Now, Epic Game Store has a default policy to not allow adult-rated games. So by default, any game that was receiving this classification was getting kicked out of EGS, even though that wasn't their goal. And they made an exception. The only exception they had for adults content, that if it's a game that was given an adult classification only because of its Web3, like it wouldn't be otherwise, Epic Store will allow it. So I think this is a massive win on top of another massive win for them in their lawsuit. So we're seeing, I think, a very strong tailwind in App Store access and for Web3 games. We'll see more pressure this year as things like EU sideloading on the iOS comes into play, where they're forcing third-party app stores to be allowed on iPhones. And we'll see how that ends up. But we've seen them successfully force them to switch all of their hardware charging ports globally. So they're very, very active right now. And the other thing we're seeing, I think we'll see, is third-party app stores who are not at that pole position in especially in regional markets like Korea and Japan, where they're second, third, fourth in profits, will be very aggressively going after how do we support Web3 and how do we almost take market share away from these incumbents who aren't willing to embrace it, and there'll be more risk on. So we're going to see a lot of progress and clarity this year. We're at the front lines as always by having our games shipping on these stores, which means we know their actual policy. Until you're shipping and testing what they're saying, you really don't know. And that's why we build these games, so we can dog through for every other game on our platform what they're actually doing.
Yep. There's so many ways in which that's valuable. We have a predictions episode coming out soon, so you can hear what we expect, more of what we expect in 2024. But with that, hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did enjoy this, please do subscribe to the channel, like, comment. This is the place to get Robbie's thoughts on everything that's happening in the news of Web3, and we will see you next time.